This is TWiT.
This goes along with news after Big Sur came out that anytime you open a program, Apple checks with their certificate server, OCSP server, to see if the developer certificate's legit and if it's been notarized. And because so many people were downloading Big Sur, it seems to have affected the OCSP server. Everything's slowed to a crawl. It's designed to fail open. So if you're not online, you won't even know. Or if you block it with Patrick's Lulu or Little Snitch, you won't even know because it says, I can't get the certificate, so I'm not going to bother. But if it's slow, it keeps trying in your software. Now, I have to say, I read about this on Thursday. I didn't notice it. I asked my wife, is your Mac slow? I didn't notice it. Any of you guys notice the slowdown on Thursday?
No.
I think it was Geo. So this is interesting to me, on two ways. One is I think there was an architectural failure in the way that it was designed because, like you said, if it didn't get a response from the internet, it would just fail, safe. You would just keep going.
Yeah.
But if it didn't but if it got through but didn't get a response, maybe it thought there was some sort of chicanery, like malware was trying to stop it from communicating, and it would fail secure. But that should have been something that was architected into it. But I dislike the reporting on this so much. It was one of those classic examples of my mom watching BBC and CNN and my YouTube comments filling up with Apple is spying on us.
It said things like every time you launch an app, Apple gets a hash of the app's name and your geolocation, time and date. And that is not true. And it was
Apple doesn't retain any of that data anyway.
Whether Apple retains it or not.
Yes.
We have to trust Apple that they don't retain it. And maybe I trust Apple, but whether they retain it or not, it isn't. And by the way, Microsoft pretty much does do that and even admits that they do that. Apple's doing it for security reasons. This is part of system integrity protection and gatekeeper.
Yes.
And
anti-malware.
And it doesn't do it all the time. It does it the first, it periodically will check the developer certificate. It doesn't necessarily know what you launched because all Adobe apps have the same developer certificate, but many apps have, can be identified by the developer certificate. So Apple is getting some information. It's not
tied to you. My understanding is that it's very similar to how their other operations work, where there is a unique but time-limited hash that lets it know that these things are happening together, but again, they say they don't retain it.
They say it could be tied to you. They've got the IP address. By the way, it's not sent, and this is the other problem. It can't be sent encrypted because the OCSP server also does a certificate approval for HTTPS, so you would have an endless loop if you send it encrypted. So it has to send it over HTTP, and that also raises the issue that it's not just Apple that may be seeing this. Your ISP will see this traffic. Anybody in between you and Apple will see this traffic. So maybe Apple's not malicious with it, but this traffic is being sent out.
Yeah, that should be better architected. The other part about the little snitch and stuff, again, if you look at this through the lens of appliance computing, I spoke to a bunch of people about this, and they're like, if I'm serious about the security, I'm not running anything on my Mac. I'm running this at the router level because I have 800 different devices in my house, and I'm not just blocking one MacBook Air. I'm blocking the stuff from everything in the house, and the only way to do that is the router. So
you could do that. You could block it. It would fail. But by doing so, you would be defeating system integrity protection.
Yeah, but if you were paranoid about most people, as much as we like to believe that we are a hard target for everyone out there on the internet, most people could care less what we had for breakfast. So, but if you have a reason to believe, if you believe, we had this discussion with Dave Nanian of Super Duper. He really opened my eyes on this. He's like, do not encrypt your backup drive. And I'm like, but why? Encryption is good. And he's like, no, nobody cares about your kids' photos but you. And once you encrypt that, if anything happens to it, those photos are lost forever. For your personal, private, highly mobile data, encrypt that completely. For stuff that's for stuff that would cause a divorce if you ever lost it, make sure that is kept in a way that you can recover it. And this is similar. There are certain things that for people, anti-malware is more important for the vast majority of people. If you are the person for whom zero knowledge is critically important, you should be doing this on the router
or using Linux. Because Windows does something very similar.
But you might want a switch. You might want a Mac. You might want a bunch of stuff in maybe your kid is on a switch.
Do it at the router. You can block it
at
the router.
Yep.
But again, you're disabling this. It's kind of a vital protection against malware.
Well, you don't have to disable it. You just let SIP run on your Mac. You don't care. It's it's just.
But it's no longer checking. it can no longer check the certificates.
Yeah, it just thinks you're. It just thinks you're
or the
you're
notarization.
offline.
Everything is not notarized. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So if you had malware that was not notarized, wouldn't matter.
But I'm guessing if you're that high, like, so yes, if you're really dumb, like if you're dumb paranoid, don't do this. But if you're really smart, you're engaging in best practices and malware is not your issue. Like there are some people for whom their data being stolen is far more of a worry than their data being lost. If being lost is far more of a worry, use every commercially available, like run it like an appliance. If being stolen,
this is the fork in the road. This is the appliance fork. We are at that fork.
And the other thing is that the last couple months I had to really think about security for our computers, and it really became because we were in a position where we were possibly targets of state actors, and so the issue is that you get into this situation where if you're really going to be serious about it, like if you're actually interesting, you need to. Our computers were completely separated from all the other computers. You weren't allowed to talk to the outside world. They were, unless they had to. And when they did, they went through. There was all these rigorous, the way that the passwords work and the way that you assess things and what you install, and all these things become something that every single piece. If you're not going to do all of those things, you're leaving gaping holes open. And the only reason most of us don't get hacked is because we're not interesting. to Rene's point, is that generally we are. One thing became very clear over the last 6 months is that in general, most of us live in a pretty wide open space, and so there's a couple things to do there. One is to be relatively knowledgeable about what you're downloading. Another thing is to it's taking those basic, financial theft is something that you're probably more apt to be in trouble for. And also, I would say, don't be interesting. Like, don't go to websites that aren't, like the thing is online is that, I used to be very, very like, how do I stay off the grid and how do I stay disconnected and everything else? And I learned that the best thing to do is just not do anything online that I can't back up, because it's just, there's when you look at all these things, people start to feel like they're secure. You're not secure. You're not secure online. If someone wants to, like you're not secure online. Like as soon as you go out there, you're not. It's the wild, wild west. And so you just have to kind of think about what you're doing and what you're connecting to, and make sure that you're doing things that are defensible.
So let's talk a little bit about the change in, and this is Patrick Wardle's tweet and all that. The change in how firewalls work. Little Snitch still works. Lulu still works. I have Lulu running on my Big Sur Mac, but apparently it's not as effective as it used to be because it's not a kernel extension.
It's in userland now, yeah.
It's in userland. So, Apple can bypass it. And then Patrick says if Apple can bypass it, then there is always the theoretical possibility that malware or bad actors could bypass it as well.